I started off doing coffee fetches, driving vans, working on New York City film sets, and I ended up going to film school at Columbia University and moved out to moved out to Los Angeles and went to graduate school at UCLA. And I worked for DreamWorks for a little while and James Cameron's company, Lightstorm Entertainment. I then broke off on my own and did visual effects, made some short films, and really just tried to make a go of it. And I think most people who end up working in entertainment find that it's very much sort of a make your own path kind of business. There are very few people that'll say, okay, you get an internship or a PA job, then you move your way up the ranks and you get promoted and now you're a director or a movie star. It never ever works that way. Most people I know who work in entertainment have had moments where they're making a lot of money, that's more rare, almost no money, and then most of your life is spent kind of in the middle, you know, hustling for the next gig. And you have to wear a lot of hats. I chose the subject of science fiction filmmaking for this panel because I think not only is it very interesting as a genre, but it's actually a lot more open than most people realize. And there are a lot of ways to do things with science fiction on a very low budget. And it's surprising because I think most people think of science fiction as massive movies with hundreds of millions of dollars, and of course it doesn't have to be that at all. So I went over this a little yesterday. For those of you who were in the panel yesterday, I apologize, this is the only little bit that's redundant. But filmmaking on a massive scale or even on a very small scale is basically the same. You have to go through the same procedures to get something accomplished. And if you've got the next Harry Potter movie or you and your friends are just making something with your iPhones, the process is pretty similar. The development stage, as you can see, there's Arnold with his stunt double and James Cameron and a teddy bear. I just thought that was funny. It's amazing what you can find on Google. I find the development stage to be the most exciting stage because it is the stage when anything is possible. There's no obstacle that's going to stop you from making your movie. You've got all the money in the world, everyone's going to say yes, and so this is the point where you're coming up with your ideas, you're writing your script, you're really kind of putting the project together, and it starts with an idea, of course. The next stage, pre-production, is where you start gathering your team together. If you've got a friend who's a brilliant artist, this is the time where they start doing storyboards and sketches. You start planning out where you're going to shoot the thing. You start looking for actors, ideally hiring actors. Production, of course, is the making of the movie. Post-production is oftentimes 2 to 3 to 4 times as long as actually filming the movie. I have friends who never get out of post-production. It can be very overwhelming because you make this movie and you realize all the things you had planned for have completely fallen apart, and now all you've got is this footage, and somehow you've got to make it into something that people actually want to see. A really great documentary, and I recommended this yesterday, is the editing of Star Wars. It's floating around YouTube. Most people think of Star Wars as a relatively actualized film, but if you look at what it took after it was made in editing, the movie was barely watchable. It didn't make sense. People didn't understand what was going on. It was boring in a lot of parts. Editing really saved that movie. And it's amazing what you can do with a movie in editing to completely reconstruct the film. And there is a saying in film production that you got the movie you've written, the movie you've shot, and the movie you've edited, and they are almost nothing to do with each other. It's really dramatic how different each of those movies can be. Post-production is that, so then you've got distribution, which is everything from film festivals to streaming. You get the whole process there. So what is a science fiction film? I've got 2 examples here of basically the same movie. Science fiction at its best is metaphorical. It's the kind of genre where you're trying to use something fantastical to tell a deeper story, something that people might not be able to process if you just literally put it in front of their face, but if you take it and put it on a planet, or you add magic, or you make the person blue instead of something else, suddenly we're able to handle it a little differently. We can separate our reality from it and think about it in a different way. You know, it's said that, as an example, Star Wars in a lot of ways was referencing Vietnam. So, you know, when people are dealing with times of great crisis and it's a little too painful to talk about the immediate now, science fiction has always been a great place where can not just escape it, but really talk about the now and the crisis in a way that people weren't thinking about it. Les Jetés is a French film that was the basis for 12 Monkeys. And why I want to show you a little bit of that movie is it was primarily film stills. The entire movie, with the exception of one shot of a woman blinking and smoking a cigarette, is still pictures. That movie became a feature film that broke Brad Pitt's career. You know, Terry Gilliam did an incredible job. If you haven't seen 12 Monkeys, I highly recommend it. It's a brilliant movie. And the entire story was told with still images and a narrator. So I'm going to just show you a little bit of that to give you a sense of, you could literally just go around with a still camera, shoot photos, and make a science fiction film that could genuinely change the genre.
It was the starting point for a whole series of tests in which he would meet her at different times. She welcomes him in a simple way. She calls him her ghost. One day, she seems frightened.
That's the dancing class next door.
One day, she leans over him. As for him, he never knows whether he moves towards her, whether he is driven, whether he has made it up, or whether he is only dreaming.
There she is, the only shot. She just opens her eyes for a second. That was it. The film was also originally, of course, in French. Le Jeté refers to the jetway. And I think that's another neat thing about this is science fiction is also a genre that's very universal culturally. Everyone can relate to it. Doesn't matter what language you're dealing with. It doesn't matter. There she goes, opening her eyes and blinking. Only motion shot in that entire film. And for those of you who haven't seen 12 Monkeys, out of curiosity, show of hands, who has and who hasn't seen the 12 Monkeys movie with Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt? Okay, so a few of you, but for those of you who haven't, here's a trailer, just to give you a sense of that movie, Hollywood style.
You're a very good observer, Cole.
We have a very advanced program, something very different.
An opportunity to reduce your sentence considerably.
And possibly play an important role in returning the human race to the surface of the earth.
No license, no prints, no warrants.
What are you talking about 5 cops like he was dusted to the eyeballs? What year is this?
What year do you think it is?
1996.
That's the future, James. Do you think you're living in the future?
I am simply trying to gather information to help the people in the present trace the path of the virus.
We're not in the present now.
This is a place for crazy people.
I'm not saying you're not mentally ill. For all I know, you're crazy as a loon.
The army of the 12 monkeys, they're the ones that spread the virus.
Monkeys.
We've been living in a meticulously constructed fantasy world. That world is starting to disintegrate.
You haven't become addicted to that dying world? No, sir.
He needs help.
I think I'm crazy when people start dying next month. I don't belong here. You're here because it's just I know some things that you don't know.
Yes, my son.
You sent me to the wrong year.
You're certain of that?
Science ain't an exact science.
You had a bullet from World War I in your leg, James. How did it get there?
I don't know.
You're a trained psychiatrist. You know the difference between what's real and what's not.
You said that I had delusions. You said you could explain.
I'm trying to.
I want the future to be unknown.
I can help you. Get you out. Can't hide from them. Don't even try.
We're all monkeys.
But they mutate. We live underground.
They're watching you.
I just want to do my part to get us back on top, in charge of the planet.
So what's weird is that is actually the same story. I mean, there are differences, but with a series of still images, that is really basically the same story. And that just blows my mind, but I wanted to give you guys a sense of the difference because You know, oftentimes when you say to people science fiction filmmaking, they think, you know, well, I can't afford to do that. That's just too much to do. I'm not a visual effects artist. And really, that is next door, right? Okay, just making sure. And really, it is a genre that is incredibly flexible. One of my favorite science fiction movies is Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve, and it's a love story in a Victorian hotel, but it's a time travel story. And it's a very flexible genre. So science fiction was born right along with cinema. The early filmmakers were really performance artists, and they had no intention of telling initially long narrative stories. In fact, one of the most important early filmmakers was George Méliès, and he actually accidentally created special effects. And what happened was, what these guys would do is they would take a camera and they would put it in the middle of a street and they would just statically film something going on. The Lumiere brothers were very famous for doing one in 1898 where workers were just walking out of a factory or a train was coming at the station. There was a rumor that everyone got scared and thought the train was going to kill them in the theater. Nobody really thought the train was going to kill them in the theater. People aren't stupid. They know it's on a screen. I think that that's always one of those things that sounds better when you read it in a book than reality. But so what Méliès was doing was he put his camera in the middle of Champs-Élysées and he starts filming, and there was a funeral carriage, like horse and carriage with a coffin in it. And where's Marvin? Hey Marvin, is it possible to ask them to turn that down just a hair next door? Thank you so much. And so the camera jams. And back in those days, when you're filming with a camera, you're hand cranking the camera. So there was no predetermined speed for the film to be recorded or any of that. And so the camera jams. Well, the funeral hearse moves, and now it's gone, and he starts rolling the camera again, never notices. And when he projects it back, he realizes it was as if it disappeared on screen. Because as you know, if I put a camera locked on a tripod here, film myself, get out of frame, start filming again, it looks like I magically disappeared. So he made a magic act out of it. Literally, the first visual effects and special effects were this guy on stage throwing some smoke and then stopping the camera, getting off stage, having someone keep filming, and he's magically disappeared. Well, at some point, he took that to the next level. He realized that he could really do something remarkable. And so he made a movie that has sustained all of these years, and that's A Trip to the Moon, which I'm just going to show you a little bit of. I'll start it with that one effect. This was in 1902. Watching this movie is film had just been invented a few years prior, and they're already making science fiction not features, but mini films basically, and it's just incredible how quickly the genre moved. The art moved. Similar to Le Jeté, one of the advantages of silent film was they were very good globally. You could show them basically anywhere in the world because all you had to do is change the language of the title cards. And then suddenly, you can do it in German, Arabic, French, doesn't matter. Just change your cards. So the studio system is really the thing that obviously had a major impact on the entertainment business, and it's affected everything from how we consume products to where our stories come from, you name it. And the studio system really rose back in the early days of filmmaking when United Artists came about and some of the larger companies started deciding that they could own all of the talent, that they could take directors and actors and put them under one house. But what really changed it was, of course, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. When in the late 70s, movies like Star Wars came out, the numbers were astronomical. The amount of money they were making on movies, these event movies, were so different than anything people had expected. And they also created new industries for movies that weren't even remotely as popular, like the consumer products divisions. So toys, for example, the first year that Star Wars came out, they didn't have toys ready. If you wanted Star Wars toys when Star Wars came out, you got a slip under the Christmas tree that said, you can get these toys in like a month or two when we mail them to you. That slip alone, I think, is worth like thousands of dollars. And the figures are called the early bird set, and it's something like 5-10 grand for the set, so you should have been so lucky. But when you're creating a film, a science fiction film, and this is also a little bit redundant from the previous session for those of you who were there, the writing process has a few stages. A log line is your idea. It's typically a run-on sentence that explains what your idea is, so that if someone has no idea what the story is going to be about, you say, it is a story about a robot that goes back in time to kill the founder of a revolution, and a revolutionary who goes back in time to stop him. A pitch is a more elaborate, longer version of that, maybe a couple paragraphs. Typically speaking, when I go to a production company and I want them to buy one of my ideas, I'll sit in an executive's office, I'll talk to them for about 5 minutes about something to do with nothing, you know, how's the weather today, how do you feel about politics, and then we get into the pitch, where for about 10-15 minutes we talk about the movie. A treatment is basically a long written out version of the story, and so typically it could be anywhere from 5 pages to 100 pages, where you're really just fleshing out the scenes, the narrative, the whole spiel. And the script is pretty self-evident. Pre-production, just to break that down a little bit, budgeting and scheduling is very important. Time on a film set is money, and when you're writing a script and you've got 5 pages of dialogue, or someone is going on and on forever, you start realizing when you're putting this stuff together, every location has a certain amount of time where you're going to have daylight, a certain amount of time when you can rent your equipment. And if you're renting equipment, the smart move is to rent it on a Friday, because it's the same rate as if you're renting it overnight. So you get it for the whole weekend. And so that's a trick a lot of people use. And so, you know, every minute on set, people are worried about losing their light, worried because you have to feed people and you're running out of time and your crew is hungry. If you've got a child on the set, you know, there's only so many hours you're allowed to work with them. The legal process is one that almost everybody forgets, and it is actually one of the most important processes, because if you go out there and you make a short film and you spend a lot of your hard-earned money, but you don't own the rights to it, you're not going to be able to, what's that? Oh, I'm telling them to go around. Sorry, thank you. I like showing you, looking at the camera. Thank you. So, you know, I've had this happen to several friends where they've spent thousands of dollars on a short film. One of the first questions you get asked at a film festival is, who owns the rights to your short? Is this based on a book? Is this based on an article? Great. Is it released? Do you have releases for your actors? Are your actors SAG actors? Did you get releases from them? Most of these companies will very easily release the rights for a short film because they know you're not making any money on it. Actors' agreements are pretty straightforward. They have free agreements. You don't have to pay people unless your project makes money. But legal is an incredibly important process, and typically speaking, what people will do is make their film, finish their film, spend all their money, and then try to sort out legal. It does not go very well for them. Casting is a really fun process. It's one of my favorite parts of it because there are a lot of talented actors that are willing to work on your film, even named actors. And it's a surprise to most people that you can get an actor that's done something that you've heard of, and they would work for free on your little short, and you think, why would they do that? Well, odds are, if they're a guest star on a TV show, they've probably got a lot of free time on their hands, and also they're trying to get more exposure, and you could be the next Steven Spielberg. And also, because your role might be so different than anything else they've done, it's just an opportunity for them. If you've got an actor who's done nothing but comedies, and you've got them playing a serial killer in your short film, that's something they don't typically get to do. And so one thing, if you're looking for an actor, especially in this location where you've got so many great theater actors and so many talented people, think outside the box. If they're good actors, they're going to be able to handle comedy even though they're drama actors, or horror even though you've seen them in something completely different. If you're trying to get them to play the thing they've played every time, go with God, good luck. They're not going to do it, unless they're just being really nice. And by the way, I've met actors at conventions where they're at autograph tables, and in my experience, if you're willing to sit there at an autograph table and make 15 bucks, if I could pay you $500 for an afternoon, that sounds like a lot of money, but if I can get, say, someone from The Walking Dead, and all I have to do is show up for 2 hours on my set, that will get you into film festivals. Actors with names in the genres, there are film festivals that will just take you for that. Crew, typically you can get most of your crew for free. Oh, so is that a question? Yes.
It was about the legal and related to the casting.
Yes.
Where's good information to find out about contracts and things like that? You know, because I assume that's going to be part of it when you approach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. SAG-AFTRA loves to give you the contracts.
Oh.
So if you go to the SAG-AFTRA website, they have different categories for legal. And so one of the contracts is the experimental contract. And it's, you don't have to write it, you don't have to think about it. It's right there, downloadable in PDF format, go for it. Most of the unions offer those contracts up. Yes, sir?
It's worth considering that those are going to be written primarily for the benefit of the performer.
Well, if they're SAG actors, it doesn't really matter.
Say again?
If they're SAG actors, it doesn't matter. You have no choice. If they're a SAG actor, theoretically, you're a SAG set. So, you know, it's the second you bring a SAG actor onto your set, you're a union shoot. Theoretically.
All contracts are negotiable.
Well, it can get the actors in trouble, and typically speaking, we're not worth it to them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't recommend that we do that, but I just wouldn't recommend signing anything without reading it first.
Well, of course, you want to read the contract, but at the same time, these aren't evil contracts. They're not going to own your project forever. And if you're shooting something for free and you're making a short film, or you're shooting it for a few $1,000s, you're not worrying about, you're not going to lock this actor in for a feature film. That's not usually where this is going to go for you. This is just about making it safe so everyone can work on set. Where you're probably going to end up getting in more trouble is the insurance requirements. That gets expensive. Locations are going to require insurance. The production house that's going to rent you equipment is going to require insurance. Sometimes the actors and the guilds will require insurance. That gets spendy. But there are even ways around that. There are umbrella policies, there are all sorts of tricks. And yes, of course, you're absolutely right. No one's going to stop you from shooting on the weekend with your friends. We've all done it, at least those of us who are in that world.
Do union actors on set necessitate union in other areas?
No.
Rigging,
No. If you're a SAG actor, it doesn't mean I have to use IATSE crew or something like that, so no. But if I am using union crew, it's flexible to a degree. I mean, you know, the thing about, and to a degree what I mean is you have to follow the rules, but at the same time, if you've got an actor who's willing to, you don't want to get that actor in trouble. And that's the problem with the SAG contract. If they're union, if you're using union people, you've got to use the contracts. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But the SAG is very friendly with that. They want people to make short films. They want people's careers to launch. When I mean like union shoots and it's flexible, I mean if you've got someone who's like a PA and they're in the union, I mean odds are they're still going to be able to help you out as your assistant director. No one's stopping a PA from getting an opportunity to be an assistant director. But SAG actors, yeah, you want those contracts. If you guys don't mind, it's a timed thing, so I'm going to kind of push questions to the end, just because you'll miss the whole thing otherwise. And visual effects is another stage of this, and the one thing I also want to say about crew and visual effects and all of this is, one of the things people want is better credits, more credits. So you can't afford a camera, you can't afford lighting equipment. Odds are there's an assistant cameraman out there with a really nice camera package who wants more DP credits and he wants to shoot as real. There's a lighting guy who needs more lighting equipment, you know, experience so he can, you know, he wants to be a gaffer and he just bought a kit. There are plenty of people out there who want to promote themselves to the next level that will work for you for a reasonable amount of money. Although they still typically will want insurance because they know you can't afford to spend $20,000 on a new lens. So I wanted to show you a short by a visual effects artist, and one of the things that I find interesting is you'll see a lot of shorts, and the director's name is Magali Barbe. I'm going to butcher that a little bit, and I'm just showing you, it's a 3-minute short, and what you'll find is people who have a lot of talent in one discipline, a cinematographer or an actor or a visual effects artist, will make shorts that push their discipline to the limits because they know they have those resources. But those are also your new best friend when you're trying to write or direct something, because those people are out there and those opportunities are, you're able to make some pretty neat stuff, as this will probably demonstrate.
Hi, my name is Victor. I'm a games developer, and I'm happy to introduce you to Strange Beasts, our augmented reality game. Strange Beasts is a new game which allows you to create, customize, and grow your very own creature. It has a very user-friendly interface with an infinite choice of customization. I find myself continually being asked the question, what is the future of home entertainment? Well, I personally believe it has to be interactive. I mean, I don't want to just be told a story, I don't want to just be sitting there looking at a screen. I want to be a part of it. I want it to feel real, and Strange Beasts is all about that real interaction. This is Walter, my virtual pet. Come on, Walter. Don't be shy. Hey, Walter. What's up, buddy? Come here, yeah. You want to play? You can save all your creations in your library. Open it, change it, save it again, as many times as you want. All of this is made possible thanks to nano-retina technology. What it does is superimpose computer graphic generated imagery over real-world objects by projecting a digital light field directly into your eye. No, look, I insist, this is not dangerous for your vision. In fact, it's the total opposite. I think of it like getting laser eye surgery, but rather than getting a better vision, you're getting kind of like a supervision. Well, with Strange Beasts, you have a friend for life, really. So it's like having a dog or a cat, but without the life expectancy. And it's been proven that having a pet can help reduce anxiety in times of stress.
Walter, what did I say? Not on the sofa. Get down. Down.
Oh, that's Anna, by the way, my little girl. Her pet's name is Blueby. She chose it. Isn't it cute? And you know what's great? Blueby and Walter can play together. Well, they can all play together. Hey Anna. How about we take Walter and Blueby to the park? Sounds good?
Anna, can you come back here, please?
Made your pet lunch. Hungry? Yeah? What's your favourite? What do you mean, which one? Cheese and ham, obviously. It's nice, right? Okay. So, after this, I was thinking maybe we'd check out a science museum. What do you think? Maybe they're for ages, haven't we? No, they've got a great Ice Age exhibition. Yeah, I've heard they've got a massive woolly mammoth skeleton. Oh, much bigger than a bear. Yes. Come on then, I'll show you. Come on. Okay, well, if you've been a good girl...
It just like breaks my heart every
Tell
time.
me your homework. Yes.
Did his daughter die? What's the story behind it? So, yeah, it was about 3 minutes long. Very, very beautiful short film. And, you know, Les Jetés was still film, and, you know, I think as you saw, you were able to, with still images, tell a compelling story. In this, with 3 minutes, you're able to tell a compelling story. The one thing about science fiction in general is you can really tell compelling stories in such a short amount of time. And I'm just going to show you briefly a little bit of this next one. I won't show you the whole thing because we're a little crunched on time. But short films in the world of science fiction and in other genres have launched careers. Certainly this one will look a bit familiar to you because it launched the career of a filmmaker who made District 9. So I just want to show you this briefly.
When I first landed, we noticed that they had these.
One of the reasons why I'm showing you this, and I'm going to kind of talk over this a little bit, is one of the things I admired about the way this short was made is he had access to South Africa. He had access to unique locations. And that's something I'm going to talk with you guys a little bit about. You know, most people make the mistake of thinking you have to be in cities like New York or LA to make great film. But we've all seen those sets and locations so many times. And as an example, I did some filmmaking here. I shot a recreation of Abraham Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater. I got to use over 300 Civil War reenactors. All I had to do was pay for a lunch for them. They all had formal wear. So I suddenly took my little short and I had what should have been thousands of dollars worth of extras, God knows how much worth of beautiful handmade costumes, all available to me because I'm filming in the DC area and there are a lot of passionate Civil War reenactors here. Here's someone who had access to South Africa. They're a visual effects artist. There's a lot of opportunity there. In this area, there are so many unique locations that you guys have. If you do have any interest in filmmaking, there are things you can do here that are so different than what is going on in the rest of the film festival circuit that you can really blow people away. And you know, Live in Joburg is a very effective short for that reason because it took us to a world that we hadn't really seen before. And you know, it's arguably a little controversial because some people have said it's very exploitative of the ghettos, which it certainly was. But not ignoring that, acknowledging it, but at least seeing how that location, politically challenging as it is, created a reality that we had not been able to see before in science fiction, with actors that were so much more credible. There's something happening there, and you can see why that created an opportunity. And in everyone's unique city, there's something that you could do to bring this genre to your world, and I think you can really make something special out here. And so I'm going to just kind of move on. Yes, it is. So concept art's one of my favorite stages, and storyboard artists, concept artists like Sim Mead can define the look of projects and really can define the genre in ways that we all become such big fans of. We're spending unreasonable amounts of money on these gorgeous large books just to celebrate their artwork, buying limited edition, all sorts of stuff. We can, you know, just to stare at this kind of stuff. But in reality, it's also a great way to sell your story, to tell your story. Now, a lot of movies are sold off of brilliant concept art. But even if you couldn't film your movie, you could literally just take concept art and turn it into a science fiction short. So getting that artwork done is a great investment in your project. And there's so many talented artists out there, everywhere from DeviantArt to you name it, on websites, where you can find people who just want interesting subjects to draw. You can meet them at conventions like this. You can meet amazing costumers, all sorts of people that can give you something that would really create a really unique result and also help further your career if that's something you're interested in. And as you can see, not just the art from Star Wars, but from District 9, these were really early concepts that very similarly ended up resembling what we saw in the final results of those movies. And that wasn't really the director, that was the artist that did that. Now, when I was making one of my first short films, it was a movie called, a short film called Forecast, and it's a story of time travel about a young boy who decides to basically run away from home, and he's obsessed with the idea of meeting his future self because there have been rumors that that's actually happening, and he picks a place that ends up being the place where he dies. So in the future, where time travel in the past is illegal, his father goes back. His father was an alcoholic. It's one of the reasons why he ran away, and trades his life to save his son. So I didn't have a lot of money. Shooting with children is very difficult, very expensive. He was a SAG actor, We had a lot of issues with making sure everyone was under contract. We followed all the rules. We had very strict guidelines on how many hours we could use him, what we could do in terms of how often he was fed, how many breaks he could have, all sorts of stuff. And so I had to plan every second of film. And so I heavily storyboarded, and you can see, if I'm going to do this little side-by-side for you, how my storyboards, before I even secured locations, in a lot of ways dictated what I ended up shooting. So none of these locations were secured. I hadn't even cast the actor. I was just putting this project together, and I thought, okay, these are all things I've got to figure out. And what's funny is that interior shot wasn't the same place as the exterior shot. These are 3 different locations, but that's the magic of cinema. You know, you see the door close and you make the connection in your head that it's the same place. And that was us sitting on the back of a pickup truck filming him while we had the street closed off. And you'll find a lot of little clever tricks when you can't afford camera cars and dollies. Wheelchairs make excellent dollies. Skateboards make excellent dollies. We didn't have that location. We just got lucky driving around and found it. There was a drainage pipe there we really needed that turned out to be perfect for our scene. And you know, it's funny how sometimes your concept art and your budget will dictate what you end up shooting. But if you're flexible when you're making something, those happy accidents end up turning out to be the things that make your film so much more interesting than it would have been otherwise. So, you know, for me, that was a really great filming location because I thought that's a perfect place to have someone spend their last moments in this isolated concrete tube. He's obsessed with this idea of meeting himself. He's desperate to get out of his reality. It probably sounds very familiar, at least to me in certain way. And so it's something I really wanted to tell that story. I had an abusive childhood. I was obsessed with my future. I wanted to get out of my now, and the idea of meeting my future self and them telling me everything was going to be okay was a really beautiful idea to me. Also very scary that that could have been the thing that would have killed me. So I talk a little bit about this, you know, people getting upgrades. We already sort of covered this, but if you're an assistant cameraman and you've got a nice camera, this is your chance to become a cinematographer. If you want to use your friends, but professionals are available, you may not want to use your friends. It's nice to have a group of friends around you when you're filmmaking, but if they're all just going to hang out, they're going to cost you a lot of money and probably ruin your film. I hate to say that, but as much of a social experience as it is, you know, when you're on set, it really is all about getting people who are as good as they can be at doing their one job, wearing as few hats as possible, ideally, although not necessarily realistically, and making the best movie you can make. Time is absolutely money in these situations. I talked a little bit about casting as well, and like I said, you'd be surprised the kind of actors you can get for low-budget filmmaking if you're willing to give them an opportunity they haven't had before. Just don't make the mistake of thinking because this person's a little famous in the TV world, they're suddenly going to get you a feature film and change your life. If they were able to get films greenlit, they probably wouldn't be in your short. Very few actors can get movies greenlit these days, including the very famous ones. Production, we had to be very creative when I was making my short film Forecast, and so Panavision at that time, we shot it on film, was giving out cameras. A lot of companies will do that, not to keep, but they will sponsor you. I was able to get free film because when film productions are done with the film they have, they keep all the film in a serial number sequence. They're not interested in using that out-of-sequence serial number film. Well, that means you've got a lot of film nobody wants. There are a lot of people who are willing to give you things for free to make a film. People who are willing to let you shoot at their location. If you want to shoot at a Subway and you're willing to use Subway in your short, you might get free lunch for your entire crew that day. And it's a lot of clever stuff like that that'll get your production made. One of the things I briefly wanted to touch on is where you want to spend your money. One of the things that most people neglect is sound. And as you can see with our competing audio situation here, sound is one of the most neglected areas of film production, and it is one of the most glaring examples of a really poorly made film. If you're not spending money on a professional sound person who's got professional sound recording equipment, you've wasted all of your money on your film typically. Your camera's microphone's not going to get it done. You're going to hear sounds from the outside world. You're going to think you can fix it in post, as everyone says they can, and you're going to end up with what they call ADR, which is after dialogue recording, I believe. And it'll never look right, it'll never sound right, and you'll spend more money on a sound recording studio in a sound session or in your friend's car trying to get the perfect match in the footage, whereas you could have just paid a guy a couple $100 to do it right the first time. So please, for the love of God, if you're making a film, spend the money on sound. Also, don't film it on your iPhone. I don't care what the commercials say. They look great, but you'd be amazed at what you can do with a beautiful camera lens, with a real cinematographer. And they're out there. They're out there in almost every city. Wedding photographers, you name it. There's so many people with cameras that want to do something creative with their lives, that have incredible setups. Lighting. It's another one that's taken for granted. And it may sound like I'm just spending all of your money and just throwing all of this stuff at it, but these are the things that people cheap out on because they get so excited that they're going to get an actor, or that they want to feed everyone really good food, which you do want to do, or that they want to have the best location possible. Sound, the basics. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Shelter, food. These are the things you have to have or you have nothing. I don't care how cool your short story is. If I can't hear it, it's a waste of your money. So I talked about this briefly, but that's my production of Abraham Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater. We recreated the film box. We had to use the opposite side. The flats were all painted by scenic artists. In Washington, D.C., I don't know how many of you are from this area. You guys have an insane reservoir of theater people. These people are ridiculously talented at painting sets, costumes, acting, lighting, sound. There are so many talented people in this city who, like many of you perhaps, want to work in film and kind of see theater as a thing they're doing. Even really established people, and I'm not trying to denigrate theater people, it's just there's a glamour to film. And as a filmmaker, that's an opportunity for you. Film commissions will also be incredibly helpful. They'll get you things for free. If you call the DC Film Commission and say, I'm making something, they are being paid to help you make that something. They can find resources for you. So even if you're just making a little short film, contact your local film commission. Work with the people that are in your local industry and the locations you guys have. My God. I mean, there are places here that are just so special and so unique. If you're in the military, see if you can work it out to film it on the military base. Make an alien movie over the weekend. You'd be amazed at what you can do at your office. Maybe your boss is going to let you film it and you're making the next office space. There are a lot fewer restrictions in cities like this than there are in places like Los Angeles, where they have put so many restrictions on filming that there are real opportunities in a place like this. And you can make something that is truly unique. I mean, if I were you guys, I'd find a bunch of Civil War reenactors and make something with them. If they're one afternoon out there with all of their uniforms on and they've got all the battle equipment and they've got pyrotechnics, my God, borrow them for 2 hours and film a war scene. That would cost you a fortune. You could never make that in any other city. You do that and then take a couple of shots in a log cabin somewhere, some sort of beautiful love story or drama or time travel story or God knows what. That's here for you, and it's not even that hard for you to get, I would think, at least what I've experienced. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a scene from my short film, which was made a couple million years ago. This was Forecast, the time travel one. And we filmed this. I was being a little self-indulgent when I made this, and I look back and I kind of have, like most people who make short films, more regrets than moments of pride. Oh, I'm going to have the name of the film on the side of the wall. I'll have water going down this drainage pipe. It's going to be so elegant, so beautiful. And in reality, did it propel the story forward? Did it make it exciting? It was just a really long credit sequence. But I did have some interesting opportunities there. These robots, and I'm going to talk about this a lot, that visual effects shot, this was all stuff that I was doing to create a version of the future. These were locations nobody wanted to film at. They were abandoned buildings. But if you've seen movies like The 12 Monkeys, the future doesn't need to look pretty, and an abandoned building with a red light can look as futuristic as anything else. You may not recognize these actors, but she's from Lost. He's been in everything from Magnolia to you name it. That was a mistake on my part. Some of these actors, let's just say, were a little bit more challenging than others to work with. If you see an actor with a lot of credits, but they never worked twice for a director, there might be a reason for that. So ask a friend. That was an experience that I can't share since we're now recording this. but ask me about it later. Anyway, he was in Deadwood. He was great. He was wonderful. And Larry Cedar, theater actor, really lovely. He was in a movie that was shot in DC called Feds. Super fun guy. We couldn't afford a time machine, so we used an iron lung. Iron lung looks like a real nice time machine if you throw a couple of fluorescent lights in there. And, throw a couple of fluorescent lights on the wall, and I got a Blade Runner looking set. I mean, that we made with a friend who was a graphic artist. The visual effects were very, very affordable to do. And so, we were able to create something here with very little money in production costs. The iron lung, nobody was renting that. It was more of a pain to move it to the location, but we took old computer equipment and a bunch of scrap metal in the background and made a time travel machine out of it basically. But you look at movies that affect you in terms of science fiction, and like a perfect example is the spinner in Blade Runner. There are shots that dissect the spinner. There's a toy walkie-talkie in there. There are all sorts of things in that when you put them together and kit bash them, and for any of you who do costumes, kit bashing is basically just taking random stuff and putting it together and making it look like something it wasn't. There's a lot of opportunity there with science fiction. You don't need to spend a lot of money on props, but just walk 10 feet and you've got a million prop geniuses at this place. And so this particular short, I was very fortunate. I got to go all over the world with it. There's a hunger for this kind of stuff, and it was a good drama story, and so I got to go to Israel, Europe, New York, LA, you name it. I won awards. Did it launch a career? Not really, but it was fun. If I could have done it all over again, I probably would not have spent $50,000 worth of credit card money on it. Yeah, that's how much it cost me. It was supposed to be 15. And that happens really quickly. It's amazing how $15,000 becomes 50. And I did not have that money. I'm not a rich person. I just kept pulling out more credit cards and applying for more credit cards. And it took me years to recover from that. But it was a really great learning experience because I realize now that the things that cost me a lot of money, nobody cared about. It was the story. If I had paid a little bit more attention to, instead of my beautiful credit sequence, if I had made sure that I had another character outside to amp up the drama, that would have been good. But I wanted a pretty credit sequence. So, you get these ideas in your head because you want to make it look like a movie you're a fan of, and you don't realize you're not paying attention to the story. Screw trying to imitate somebody. Make the most interesting short, the most compelling story you can. I didn't do that, and I had $50,000 worth of debt, and sure, I won some festivals and got to travel around, but, I could have been smarter. The post-production process is a process I've worked in for years. Film processing is really no longer relevant, but if you want to shoot on film, man oh man, are there a lot of opportunities on there. And let me tell you, film is still better than digital. It looks better, it feels better, there's a quality to it. This is not me being an old guy and saying that. I'll show you something shot on film, I'll show you something shot on digital, and I promise you it'll feel more organic, it'll feel more right. And there's so many opportunities out there now because not as many people are filming with that kind of equipment. And so there's a real opportunity there. And editing, sound, music, visual effects. The one thing about sound and music is, like acting, you got to get licensing for stuff. If you want to put it in a film festival, you can't put Britney Spears or whoever else in it. You just can't do that. You need to get the rights to stuff. But there are so many talented composers, soundtrack elements, so many ways you can get that done without having to spend a fortune. Again, if you can think of the job, probably someone out there wants an opportunity. You just have to do the work to find them. And as far as sound and music goes, this is a great city for that. There are so many talented musicians, violinists, guitarists, people with sound sets. There are people who can make something so compelling. One violinist friend of yours in a room filming a beautiful love song, and that Civil War movie I just made up in my head with the love scene in the cabin, you could have shot for a fraction of what I paid for my stuff, and you've got something that's going to explode everyone's brains in the festival circuit. Visual effects is an interesting thing. It doesn't need to cost a lot of money, and there are a lot of really great resources online. There's a website called Turbo Squid where people make generic elements from robots to guns to spaceships to you name it. Yes, you have to animate them. Yes, you have to paint them. But that robot cost me $25. I had a friend who was a pretty good artist, he painted it. Another friend who knew how to animate it, he animated it. So a scene that could have cost in a major movie $10,000, $15,000 cost me about $500. There are so many places online where you can not just find artists, but pre-built elements that you can really change your life. And the thing next to it, in one of my scenes, I had water rushing at the camera when you see the kid drown in one version of the timeline. Well, that's a server rack, an AC duct, rather not very tall man, and we just put a piece of plexiglass, and we dumped a bucket of water and shot right at the camera. The whole thing cost me about $150. You know, and again, it's just being clever, figuring out solutions to problems. I want to talk to you a little bit about really horrible movies. So you may notice that says Atlantic Rim too, not Pacific Rim. There is a company out there called Asylum that makes movies that are basically knockoffs of the movies that we go typically to see. Not Transformers, Transmorphers, not Pacific Rim, Atlantic Rim. But think about it this way. Look at the credits at the end of those movies. If they're willing to do that, they're probably willing to do your movie. And that's a great way to find people. These movies cost a fraction of the money, and they're not going for story. They're not going for talent. They're going for, it's a business model. And I don't fault them for it. The entertainment business is a business. Nothing, well, maybe a few things wrong with how they're doing that, but, you know, at the same time, it's understandable that someone thinks they could just rip you off, make a crappy version of it, and make this horrible movie. Actually, there's everything wrong with it. I don't even want to apologize for it. But at the same time, I want you to look at it as a trailer real quick and think of it in terms of what you could do if you were making something original with those resources. What's that? What's the legality? You can't copyright an idea. It's the interpretation of the idea that you can copyright. That's why filmmakers are so protective of their ideas. And to me, it breaks my heart to think that you know, all these actors, all these people are doing this. Imagine if they just decided to make something unique, original, a real story that, but you know, writing is one of the hardest elements to do, and people don't spend enough time writing a great story. So it's a lot easier to just make something schlocky. And that's if there's one thing I would say to any aspiring filmmakers: don't imitate. Make something that is more unique, more your story, more your location, your unique truth. Because, God, there's enough copies out there already, and they're awful. I'm not even going to bother showing you Pacific Rim 2. You know what it looks like. You've seen it. That's a shot from Transmorphers. I'm not going to subject you to that. Transformers. This was, again, me being an idiot. All that graffiti wasn't there. I wanted my name on the wall, because wouldn't that be cool? I can't tell you, it's funny, when I first put all this together, I was doing this to show you what could be done, but now I look at it as, please God, don't do what I did. You know, there was so much ego on the screen there, and so little thought for story. And it was the biggest mistake of my 20s. I'm 45 now, so I'm much older. And I spent so much of my 20s trying to be Steven Spielberg or James Cameron, trying to make a massive movie. I wanted to be a star. And so if I could put my name on there, make it cool, make it pretty, if I spent half as much time trying to tell a great story, trying to make something that would be interesting to you, and I told myself I was doing that, but I wasn't. And you know, it's so easy to fall into that trap when you're making films, to serve your own ego and to make something sound on time. And I just want you to focus on the mistakes that I've made, because I'm still figuring it out, but that is the one lesson I can impart on you is, for the love of God, take your ego and throw it away, and just make something that's a compelling story, and tell your truth. That's a little bit more about the robots. You got the idea on that. Film festivals. The most fun I've had making movies has probably been, I've probably said that every single time, but film festivals are such a blast. It's your opportunity to take what you've done, show it to other people, get their reactions, be around other filmmakers. I was in Israel one night, drinking beer, you know, staring at the desert with a bunch of filmmakers, you know, just talking about lenses and life and art. And I was like, oh, this is the best. that was worth it. Yeah, I made this ego piece that didn't change my life in some ways and changed it a lot in other ways, but I got to be around all these really cool people that were doing it. And that is the best part about this, is it can be a very isolating pursuit to create creative things, but if you can get it out there in the world in film festivals, man, it's just so much fun. Apply to every festival. Who cares if it's a big festival, if it's a famous festival? Every time they say yes and you can afford it, go. It's worth it. Who cares? Sundance, all that. It doesn't matter if it's a big one. Just go to the little ones. It's the fun is the fun. Distribution now. And this is kind of where I'm wrapping this part of it up and giving you guys some time for questions. Distribution is changing so much right now. Yes, you can self-distribute, but that's really not going to pay your bills. But the good news is there are so many people that want content, and they want content from a different kind of people than they used to want content from. If you're in any way an other, my God, they want your content. I mean, and all of us on one level or another are another, but if you can find a way to take what is fringe about you, the stories that you're passionate about, the ideas that you have, and make it interesting and mainstream enough. I'm not saying mainstream like, turn it into the next Michael Bay movie, but you still have to justify paying for it. There are so many people out there that are looking to buy this content. And yeah, you're going to have to get a little further ahead than just making a short film typically to get there, but it's the beginning of something. And for those of you who are interested in doing it, I'd love to talk to you more about it, tell you some stories I can't tell you when I'm being recorded, but it's such a great time to be a creative person. There are so many opportunities, so many voices that we get to hear now that we haven't been listening to before. And science fiction is the genre for those voices, because it gets the people who wouldn't ever want to listen to you anyway. And that's my favorite thing about science fiction. So, thank you very much. Thank you. Questions? Oh, great. Sorry. We're going to just put this on the table. Yes.
So what is the difference between union and that? You keep saying that, but...
Well, so there are different unions for different disciplines. So you've got the Directors Guild, you've got the cinematographers, you've got just the regular crew unions, the IATSE, you've got the actors, which is theatrical and film actors. So in most of the disciplines, there are different unions for them. And they have different requirements for how you can pay their people, how you can use their people, what kind of hours, what kind of resources they need to be given. But almost every union have contracts that are very friendly to independent filmmakers, where you don't necessarily have to pay their people, unless your project makes money. Then they want you to pay those people first. But that's right. They're working for free. I mean, it's honorable. But the contracts are out there, and they will work with you. You can literally call the union up and say, I'm making a short film. I don't have any money. I want to use some of your people. Please help. And that's what they're there for. They will be helpful, typically. Yes, sir?
Is there a place we can watch Forecast usually?
So Forecast, there's another interesting lesson in life. So I'm happy to give you a copy. But one of my lessons in life, when I was working for James Cameron, there was this used science fiction bookstore near me, literally a couple blocks from the office. I'm like, this is fate, and none of the executives had been over there. I was like, how is that possible? So I would go there, and it was run by this old Hassine and his wife, and they were like the sweetest couple, and we would just nerd out and talk about science fiction for hours. And so that company was so generous. And to be fair, I know why they hadn't done it. They were busy making big movies, and that's why they had me. I was the lower level guy who do your job, go find stuff. So it was an opportunity of a lifetime, and it was such a gift to be able to work for them. So I went to this little store, and I would bring stuff back to my bosses and say, look what I read today. And in one of them, it was an anthology. It was made in it was a book from the 70s. And I thought, well, I'll get the rights to this one story in this anthology. And the guy was a professor. Nobody had made it into anything. It seemed like it was a good idea at the time, except that his agent wasn't used to doing film and CD contracts. So he said, well, we've got a place out in LA that we use. Well, that place was a big agency. They didn't want to deal with some schmuck like me because although unions and actors and those people will be very friendly, agents don't want to deal with us. agents have a very logical purpose. They are there to make commission off of something that's being sold. They're not they're not there to be magic career makers or mentors. They're like real estate salesmen. Nothing wrong with that. It's a very valuable purpose. But they sell something and make commission off of it. And someone calling them up and saying, I have no money and I want this, can I take your valuable time and have you take me being inexperienced and negotiate a contract with me? It was a nightmare. They had zero interest in talking to me. It was brutal. I was negotiating with an assistant, and in the end, I ended up paying about, over the course of a few years, because I kept renewing the rights, $8,000 for the rights. That's where some of the money went to. I paid about $5,000 for a lawyer, more money right there, and I don't own the rights at all to it because I was optioning it because they had me do it as an option so that if it sold, their client would make money. It makes sense to them. I don't fault them. They're not bad people, but I blew all that money on something I should have just written an original piece. So I was offered to put Forecast on the Sci-Fi Channel. I was offered to do all this stuff with it, but I only had film festival rights to it. So, wow. And I kind of realized that reality after the fact. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, you sort of covered it with the, you know, the work with you while, you know, on your level, if, you know, you're upfront with them. But what, you always hear about, well, if you're working with SAG, you have an X amount contract, and you have to pay them X amount.
Right.
Which I think deters people because they start to think that you know, well, that's the enemy, but it's not really true. How do you, I guess, how do you approach someone? Because I know that there's 1,000 no's and then you get a yes, but how would you approach someone with this is my budget, we won't be paying you, but this is my plan?
It's, you know, in my experience, people understand. If they've never heard of you, they assume you have no budget.
Right.
If they're not being contacted by their agent because this is a big gig, they assume you have no budget. So you're not going to like shock them by saying, hey, I'm a person, I want to make something. Surprise, I don't have $100 million. They're expecting that to be the case. You know, people who have budgets call their agents and make offers, or they go to auditions and do castings for. So, yeah, I mean, you should say it, you should be respectful, but, you know, they're going to get that. It's not like that's a surprise sell to them. Now, of course, there are people who are very wealthy who, you know, do have budgets, but that's the exception. That's unusual. But for example, so for actors that I approached, typically what I would do is if I didn't have a direct connection to the actor, that's always best. 6 degrees. If you can have some way to directly reach that actor and not go through their representation, that's your move because the representation is there as a guard against you. Because you're not going to pay, so for all the logical reasons, they don't want their client to be called and bothered by someone who just wants to give them free work. Unless you are a famous short filmmaker, and there aren't too many of those because usually they become filmmakers. But you know, a direct appeal typically involves contacting the agent if the agent is open to it, which surprisingly they can be. Managers are better than agents because managers are career guardians, agents are salesmen. So managers are easier. You call a manager, you explain who you are, you explain what your budget is, you explain what you're doing. They're probably going to want to read the script. You explain that it's a role that you think will be great for their actor, and then you write a beg letter. So you know, I reached like David Stratham for my role of Lincoln. I got Jeffrey DeMunn from The Walking Dead, but he wasn't in The Walking Dead at that point. He was in The Big Mile. And I wrote a very nice beg letter. I'm Eric Courtney. You've never heard of me, but I have this really unique opportunity. I'm the only person in American history that gets to film Abraham Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater. That's a sell. You know, now you got to find a couple of those, right? I want you to play Abraham Lincoln, and I got my visual effects friend to take a photo of him and a photo of Lincoln and apply fake makeup to the photo so he could see what he looked like as Lincoln. Now I'm not just sending a letter to every other guy. I'm making some effort. And I loved you in this movie. I really thought what you did was profound. It would be amazing if I could have an opportunity to meet you and discuss the role. And that, you know, we've met and discussed the role. I've screwed that up before too. The one that breaks my heart is Shea Wiggum. who's been in a lot of stuff, Boardwalk Empire, you name it. I totally screwed that meeting up. I met him, he was really lovely, and he asked me a bunch of questions, and I was being young and stupid, and I wanted to sound like a smart director. Oh, I love the moment when you stared into the camera. What were you thinking? I mean, I must have sounded so painful to work with, because he must have thought every eye roll was going to be microanalyzed. So afterwards, he called and very politely told the casting director he wasn't available. Well, that was a really nice way of saying this guy screwed up the interview, because you don't go to an audition with a short film director unless you're interested. I screwed it up. And so, yeah. Like I said, the story that I'll tell you later about the other guy if you're interested. Woo. Anyone else? Great. Well, thank you so much.
Could I throw in a plug for
yes.
Professional organizations like SIMPTI, Women in Film and Video, and Virginia Film Alliance?
Yes, Virginia Film Alliance, Women in Film and Video, SIMPTI, there are all sorts of amazing organizations out there that can be very supportive for your projects. And there's so many opportunities out there for people who really want to do something with you. And like I said, if you're any kind of a fringe voice, my God, it's such a great time, and there's so many resources. Yeah, Virginia Film Commission was incredibly helpful for me. Thank you. Yes.
Have you ever done projects with another person where you come with an idea and try to merge the two?
Yes.
How does that work out for you?
Is that camera still recording?
That one is.
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, wait on that. Never mind.
Should
You
I
got
pause?
it right there.
Would you like me to stop? Yeah.
I'm about to tell two stories.